stories and unravel the mysteries with Dark Crime Box. Subscribe now and step inside the world of true crime like never before.
If you appreciate careful, fact-based true crime storytelling without sensationalism, support Dark Crime Box by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. When the steel doors closed behind Bryan Kohberger, the world he understood ended instantly. There was no countdown, no gradual adjustment, no soft landing. One moment, he was a man defined by routine, structure, and personal control. The next, he became an inmate, identified not by name but by number, schedule, and restriction. Incarceration is not loud in the way movies suggest. It is quiet, repetitive, and suffocating. Days blur together under fluorescent lights. Time stretches, and the smallest details, things most people never think about, become overwhelming. Among them, food. According to publicly reported information from credible sources, Bryan Kohberger has reportedly struggled to adapt to prison food conditions since entering custody. This is not unusual, but in his case, it has drawn attention because it highlights how drastically his environment has changed. Prison meals are standardized, limited, and designed only to meet basic nutritional requirements. They are not personalized. They are not negotiable. And they arrive on a schedule that cannot be altered. For someone accustomed to control over diet, routine, and daily choices, the adjustment can be jarring. In prison, food becomes more than nourishment. It becomes a symbol of lost autonomy. Meals are eaten quickly, often in silence, sometimes under watch. There is no choice of ingredients, no variation, no comfort. The same trays, the same portions, day after day. Reports suggest Kohberger has found this transition difficult. Whether related to dietary preferences, physical response, or psychological stress, the struggle reflects a deeper reality of incarceration. Prison does not adapt to the individual. The individual is forced to adapt to prison. This is where the public narrative often becomes distorted. Outside the walls, discussions online turn prison life into spectacle. Mocked, exaggerated, or dismissed. But inside, the experience is far more mundane and far more punishing. Hunger is not always about lack of calories. Sometimes it is about lack of familiarity, lack of dignity, and lack of control. Kohberger now lives in a system governed entirely by routine. Wake-up times are fixed. Movement is regulated. Silence is enforced. Meals arrive whether he is ready or not. In this environment, even food becomes psychological pressure. It reinforces the reality that nothing belongs to him anymore. Not time, not space, not preference. At this point in the story, pause for a moment. If you find value in grounded, documentary-style storytelling like this, help Dark Crime Box grow by liking this video and sharing it with others who care about thoughtful, true crime coverage. As weeks turn into months, incarceration reshapes a person. The body adapts, the mind resists, and for someone awaiting trial, every day carries uncertainty. The food, the cell, the routine. They are constant reminders that the future is no longer self-directed. It is decided elsewhere by people unseen. What makes Kohberger's reported struggle with prison food notable is not the food itself, but what it represents. It exposes how quickly identity erodes in confinement. How personal habits dissolve. How control disappears in the most basic ways. Eating becomes survival, not choice. This chapter is not about sympathy. It is about reality. Prison is not designed to comfort, rehabilitate, or accommodate. It is designed to confine. And the discomforts, however small they may seem, are part of that design. In the next chapter, we will explore how incarceration affects the psychology of someone facing intense public scrutiny, and how isolation, routine, and institutional living begin to reshape behavior over time. Before moving on, subscribe to Dark Crime Box, turn on notifications, and stay with us as this story continues. And consider this question. When freedom is stripped away completely, which loss weighs more, the physical confinement or the quiet erosion of identity? Inside prison, time does not move forward. It circles. Days repeat themselves with mechanical precision, and for Bryan Kohberger, that repetition has become the defining feature of his existence. The outside world continues, news cycles shift, conversations fade. But inside, nothing changes unless the system allows it to. Psychologists who study incarceration often describe the early months as the most destabilizing. This is when identity begins to fracture. The mind searches for familiar anchors, routine, preference, autonomy, but finds none. Every movement is monitored. Every action requires permission. Even the most basic human needs are regulated by someone else's schedule. Food sits at the center of this adjustment. In prison, meals are not moments of comfort or social connection. They are transactions. A tray slides forward. A countdown begins. The food is consumed quickly, not because it is satisfying, but because lingering draws attention. What is left is not fullness, but awareness of where you are and why. Reports indicate that Kohberger has had difficulty adapting to these conditions. While prisons meet nutritional requirements, the meals are intentionally uniform. This sameness removes individuality. There are no personal diets unless medically required. For someone previously accustomed to control and structure, the shift can be mentally jarring. Incarceration forces the mind inward. With limited stimulation, thoughts grow louder. Memory loops. Anxiety stretches time. Meals, once an afterthought in free life, become markers in the day. Breakfast means morning count is over. Lunch signals another long afternoon. Dinner confirms the day is nearly done, but tomorrow will be identical. Correctional environments are designed this way on purpose. Routine creates order. Predictability reduces disruption. But for inmates awaiting trial, routine can feel like suspended animation. Life is paused, yet relentlessly ongoing. Each meal reinforces that pause. Isolation compounds these effects. Limited contact, restricted communication, silence broken only by announcements and metal doors. In this environment, the body adjusts faster than the mind. Hunger cues shift. Sleep patterns change. Stress becomes physical. For Kohberger, the reported struggle with food reflects a broader challenge. Adaptation. Prison strips away negotiation. Complaints rarely change outcomes. The system does not respond to frustration. It absorbs it. Over time, resistance gives way to resignation or to internal conflict. This psychological pressure does not announce itself dramatically. It builds quietly. Appetite changes. Focus narrows. Emotions flatten or intensify without warning. Food becomes less about taste and more about endurance. Fuel to get through another identical day. Public interest often frames prison life as either too harsh or too lenient. The reality exists in between. It is not spectacle. It is monotony. And monotony, sustained long enough, becomes its own form of punishment. As Kohberger remains incarcerated, awaiting the next stage of the legal process, this environment continues to shape him, not through force, but through absence. Absence of choice, privacy, and personal control. Meals, small as they seem, are part of that absence. This chapter is not about sympathy or judgment. It is about observation. Prison life changes people in ways that are subtle, cumulative, and irreversible. In the next chapter, we will examine how prolonged confinement and public scrutiny intersect, and how being at the center of a nationally watched case can intensify the psychological weight of incarceration. Before you continue, subscribe to Dark Crime Box, turn on notifications, and stay with us. And consider this question: when a system removes every personal choice, how long does it take before a person stops expecting any at all? For Bryan Kohberger, incarceration does not happen in isolation. It unfolds under a microscope. Few inmates experience confinement while being constantly discussed, analyzed, and dissected by the outside world. Public scrutiny follows him into the prison walls. Not physically, but psychologically. Every report, every headline, every rumor becomes part of the invisible pressure shaping his days. Prison is built to erase individuality, yet high-profile cases create the opposite effect. Identity becomes fixed, frozen in public perception. Kohberger is no longer anonymous within the broader narrative surrounding him. Even in wait, meals continue to arrive with mechanical regularity, reinforcing the system's control. But under public attention, even these mundane details take on exaggerated meaning. Reports of his difficulty adjusting to prison food spread quickly, debated and reframed far beyond their actual scale. What is often lost in that discussion is context. Prison food struggles are common, particularly during early incarceration. The body resists sudden changes. Stress alters appetite. Familiar comforts vanish. For someone under intense mental strain, even minor disruptions feel magnified. This does not make the experience extraordinary. It makes it human. Psychological experts note that prolonged exposure to public scrutiny can intensify isolation. When a person knows their name carries weight beyond the walls, silence becomes heavier. The absence of privacy becomes absolute. Every routine becomes performative, even when no one is watching directly. Food, again, sits quietly at the center of this experience. It arrives without ceremony. It leaves no memory. It becomes a reminder that life has narrowed to essentials only. There is no indulgence. Just repetition. The tray becomes another symbol of a future that is entirely uncertain. Halfway through this chapter, if you value this kind of measured, documentary-style narration, help Dark Crime Box grow by liking this video and sharing it with others who prefer depth over sensationalism. As time stretches on, adaptation becomes unavoidable. Some inmates harden, others withdraw. Some internalize routine so deeply it becomes invisible. For someone awaiting trial, adaptation carries a risk, becoming too accustomed to a suspended life. Meals, once markers of time, become the only forward movement in a day that otherwise stands still. Public interest does not fade simply because time passes. For Kohberger, this means confinement layered with anticipation. Court dates loom distantly, legal processes move slowly, and inside nothing changes. The same walls, the same food, the same hours. This is the unseen weight of incarceration under scrutiny. Not violence, not chaos, but endurance. Endurance of sameness, endurance of attention, endurance of a life reduced to compliance. Prison does not announce its impact loudly. It reshapes quietly. Habits dissolve. Expectations lower. The mind learns not to ask for more than what is given. In this environment, food is no longer about satisfaction. It is about compliance. Accepting what arrives because resistance leads nowhere. As this chapter closes, the broader question emerges. Not about comfort, not about punishment, but about transformation. What happens to a person when their identity is defined entirely by a system and a narrative they no longer control? In the final chapter, we will reflect on what prolonged confinement means when justice is still unresolved, and how time itself becomes the most powerful force inside prison walls. Before moving on, subscribe to Dark Crime Box, turn on notifications, and stay with us until the end. And leave your thoughts below. When a person lives long enough under total restriction, do they change, or simply disappear into the routine? In prison, the passage of time becomes the final authority. Not guards, not walls, time. It moves slowly, deliberately, without urgency. For Bryan Kohberger, each day inside follows the same rigid pattern, and with repetition comes a quiet reckoning. Not dramatic, not explosive, just steady erosion. Confinement narrows life to essentials. Sleep, count, meals, waiting. The outside world fades into abstraction, while the inside world grows dense and heavy. The reported struggle with prison food, small on the surface, has remained a symbol of this narrowing. It reflects how little is left to control, how even the most basic routines can become sources of tension when autonomy is gone. Awaiting trial places a person in a suspended state. There is no resolution, no forward motion, only anticipation. The future exists, but it cannot be reached. In that space, the mind searches for stability wherever it can find it. Routine becomes both anchor and weight. Meals arrive on time, unchanged, reminding him that nothing progresses except the calendar. Over time, resistance gives way to accommodation. The body adjusts, expectations shrink. What once felt intolerable becomes normal. This is not acceptance in a moral sense, it is survival. Prison teaches compliance not through force, but through repetition. When every day looks the same, the mind learns not to hope for variation. Public attention continues beyond the walls, but inside, its influence is indirect. There are no cameras, no commentary, just awareness. Awareness that every detail can be discussed, misinterpreted, amplified. That awareness adds another layer of isolation. Silence becomes safer. Routine becomes refuge. Food remains central not because of its quality, but because of its certainty. It arrives whether emotions are steady or unraveling. It marks time in a place where time has no other markers. In this way, meals become less about nourishment and more about endurance. Proof that the day has been survived. This chapter is not about punishment or comfort. It is about consequence. Incarceration reshapes a person gradually, often invisibly. It strips life down until only structure remains. And structure, sustained long enough, changes how a person thinks, waits, and exists. As the legal process continues at its own pace, Bryan Kohberger remains inside that structure, living a life defined not by choice, but by compliance. The food, the routine, the isolation, none of it resolves anything. It simply continues. And that is where the story rests for now. Not with answers, but with time. Time pressing forward. Time doing what it always does inside prison. Changing everything quietly. Before you go, support Dark Crime Box by liking this video, sharing it, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. And leave your thoughts below. When a person lives long enough under total routine and restriction, does time reform them, or does it simply wear them down?